Welcome to this CSS tutorial. Now in this video we're going to be talking about the div element, and the div element is a very important topic in CSS. Now the div element is a HTML element, but I decided to bring up this topic in this CSS series because the div element goes hand in hand with CSS. So that's why we are going to be doing the div element in this CSS series, but it's the HTML element. So I want you to see the div element like a container. Okay, you use the div element to separate sections in your web page. So you separate sections from section. You can separate a particular section from another section. You can also a div element is a container, so you can also move div items. You can also move items inside of a div. So that is how the div works. I want you to see the div like a container. Okay, so now in this video we are going to be separating. I'm going to show you an example of the div element and what it can do. So we are going to be separating our sections like we have here. You can see we have the game website, so we are going to separate from this image up to the game website, and we are going to separate the download section below. We are going to separate from the download section downwards. So that is what we are going to be doing in this video using the div element. So let's go back to our index.html. So you can see, let me just toggle this very well. Sorry, let's toggle this. Okay, now like I said, we are going to separate the sections. So you can see this is the H1, the game. So we are going to separate from this image upwards. Okay, so let's give this div. Like I said before, I want you to see the div element like a container. Okay, and you can move it around. So you say div, and then you close your tag. So let's cut out this closing tag. Cut out the closing tag. Now let's paste it under the image. Let's paste it over here. Now we have pasted the div element, the div closing tag under the image. So now let's also give a div for the second section. Let's create a div for the second section. Let's cut out the closing tag. Sorry, let's cut out this closing tag, and let's paste it below everything here. So now let's go back to our web page now. So if we refresh this, now you will see we have refreshed this, but nothing happened. There is nothing applied to our web page. This is because the div element is somehow transparent. It's like it doesn't do anything unless you style it. Okay, the div element, you need to style a div element to be able to see it. Okay, it's just see a div element like something that is transparent. So you need to do something to be able to see a div element. Okay, it's invisible, so just see it like that. So now let's style it. Let's style the div element so we can be able to see our div element. We can be able to see the container. Like I said, you can call it a container because it's somehow like a container. So let's give this div a class up here for our first section. So create a space. Let's give it let's use an ID. Okay, so let's use an ID. We say ID, the ID attribute. So let's call this first section. Let's call it first section. An ID of first section. Now let's give this the second section an ID. We are using ID because it's a specific element. So we say ID. So say second section. So now let's go over to our style sheet. So remember, we need to style this. So let's go over to our style sheet. let's go down here. So let's specify our first section. So remember, you use the pound sign, then you say first, you call your ID section. So let's give this since we want to see this, like remember the div, you see the div like the div is like a container. So let's give this div a background color of red. Let's give this a background color of red so we can be able to see our div container. So now if we refresh this, let's go back to our web page, and now let's refresh. Now you can see like I said, it's like a container. So you can see this section, you can see all these sections, they are colored red, but there is nothing happening in this section. That is because we haven't styled this section. But you can see the container, you can see the container of the first section that we have given a background color of red. So that is how this thing now is a div. It's more like a container. So that is how the div works. So now let's style the second section. Let's go back to our code editor. So let's pick the second section. Let me create some space here. So we'll say use our pound sign, say second section. Let's give this a background color of blue. Let's give this one a background color of blue. So now let's refresh. Now you can see the difference. Can you see that difference? You can see this section is red and this section is blue. So that is how the div element works. You can see the difference here. This is a container, the second section container, and this is the first section container. So that is how that was the div element. You can also move around your div. You can also shift your div element if you want, and we will be looking at that in further tutorials. But for this tutorial, I just want to make you understand how the div element works. It's a very important topic in HTML and CSS, and it's a widely used element in HTML and CSS. The div element is a widely used element, so you should know it very well, and we are going to be using it more in future tutorials, so don't worry about that. So this is how the div element works. It's more like a container. You can put lots of things inside the div. Okay, yeah, so that will be it for this tutorial concerning the div element. Like I said, we'll be discussing more on the div element in future tutorials. But that will be it for this video. I will see you guys in the next video.